Well, if the Americans are the enemy of the West, it begs the obvious question: who are these Wests? What kind of classification is it that does not include the biggest country in Europe and now doesn't include the United States of America? It doesn't include Latin America. We've all long gotten used to that. It does have some geographical peculiarities. Australia and New Zealand are, for now at least, a part of the West. So is Japan, although tell that to the men that were building the bridge over the River Kwai. Tell them that in the camp at Tenko. The idea that the United States is now the enemy of the West immediately brands the people who are describing it thus as really living on another planet. But then we know already that they do. You'll be familiar with the pampered pompadour pop stars who gathered at the height of the Ethiopian famine to sing "We Are the World." They really do think they are the world, and the they is getting smaller by the day. Who is the West? Is it the TikTok army of Norway that I just saw there? The hippie army of the Netherlands, of fond memory, with flowers in their hair and legalized weed in their knapsacks? Who exactly is this coalition of the willing? Believe it or not, he actually said that. Keir Starmer actually used the phrase that Tony Blair used to assemble a group of people to invade and occupy Iraq in the biggest foreign policy blunder since First World War. He used it again. He's assembling a coalition of the willing, a coalition of the killing. We call Tony Blair's, but actually the killing will be almost all the other way around in Keir Starmer's coalition. This charge of the woke brigade gathered in London today. The King of England was pimped out by a here today, gone tomorrow politician. First, he was forced into signing a letter inviting Donald Trump to come for a second state visit, although the horses are still recovering from the fright of his last one. And then Zelensky gets taken to meet the king. You can forget about Donald Trump coming now. If you'll forgive me putting it this way, why would Donald Trump want sloppy seconds of King Charles III? There'll be no state visit by Donald Trump, and it's maybe just as well, because the Conservative Party, long the traditional right-wing party of the country, long the most pro-American of all the parties, declared today that Donald Trump will not be welcome on a state visit to Britain until he has proved to Kemi Badenough that he's a reliable enough ally of this now amorphous, mysterious, actually, West. So I want to take a closer look at who and what the West is, because if we're about to form a coalition of the killing to invade Ukraine, despite the warning from Russia that it will inevitably lead to World War III, we better know the mighty armies that we're dealing with. Let's start with the TikTok army of Norway. They were there in front of their weapons, in their fatigues, literally doing a TikTok dance in celebration of the fact that a major Norwegian company had refused to refuel the nuclear submarines belonging to the United States Navy. That's the United States Navy protecting them. They refused to give it fuel. Just yesterday, the Norwegian army didn't stand up in the Second World War to too much examination. Indeed, it didn't stand up to any examination at all. It was occupied by Hitler before you could say Jack Robinson. Or what about the Swedish army? Well, they declared neutrality so that Hitler wouldn't have to fight them in order to occupy them, which he very promptly did. There's the Danish army, there's the Dutch army, there's the Portuguese army, there's the Spanish army, there's the Italian army, whose tanks have 1 forward gear and 5 reverse gears. And then there's the German army. Remember them? The putative Prime Minister, Chancellor of Germany, actually put out a picture of himself and branded himself the leader of the free world. Jawohl, mein Führer, said nobody at all. Not even the 25% of the German people who voted in the elections last week can fancy being the leader of the free world, especially if that means having to re-enter Ukraine with force, because they took quite a bloody good hiding the last time that they were there. Or it could be the British army that will lead this coalition of the willing. It could be the British army whose one aircraft carrier is unable to leave the port right now, running repairs and all that, you know. Probably just as well, because it would not last the proverbial 5 minutes. Or maybe Britain's 40 serviceable tanks. 40 serviceable tanks. Russia has 9,000 tanks on the battlefield. Britain has 40 that are capable of being sent into action, though you'd need to get them from Britain to the Ukrainian battlefront without further mishap, or you'd be down to 39, or maybe 38. Or maybe it's the British Army as a whole. Well, I now discover that we have 74,000 soldiers in the British Army. That's roundabout the crowd at Old Trafford this very afternoon. Although only half of that 79,000, only half of them are frontline troops. The rest are medics and orderlies and cooks and barbers and the like. And 25% of that half are unavailable for combat at any one time, for one reason or another. So it's a dad's army, really, that they're assembling there. And they're throwing money at Zelensky like it went out of fashion. As I told you, 4 billion British pounds were given to Zelensky across 2 days by Sir Keir Starmer in a country so straitened that we are staring down the barrel of another recession. Our old age pensioners are freezing. 4 million of our children are hungry. Our public realm is crumbling to dust in front of our eyes. Our cities, no-go areas for the police in many places in the country. Boys stabbing each other. Girls stabbing old age pensioners, as happened in London the night before last. 3 girls, teenager, 14, 15, 16, arrested after allegedly murdering an old age pensioner on the streets of Britain. You'd think that a Labour government might be inclined to stay at home and fix the roof in our own country, instead of claiming there's no money to fix the roof because I've given it all so that Zelensky can sniff it up his proverbial hooter. But that's what's happening. And I got to asking myself, what's he going to spend this money on? Donald Trump has already said there'll be no more American weapons sent to Ukraine. The European armories are empty. It would take a lead time of a year or 2 years to order new tanks from a factory. What is this money for if it is not money laundering? If it is not to come back to the various countries giving this largesse in kickbacks for the political class, like it is now abundantly clear it has been doing under both the Obama and the Biden administrations. But that didn't stop the money flow continuing. And little Macron, whose wife is alleged to have sexually molested him at the age of 14 when she was 40, is now, according to Candace Owens, revealed to be a man, a transgender woman. That's what I mean about the charge of the woke brigade. You know, are we really going into battle behind Mr. and Mrs. Macron? Are we really going into battle behind the self-appointed Führer of the free world, Mr. Metz or Merz or Mercedes, whatever it is they call him? Are we really sending our soldiers into harm's way as part of this coalition, riding once more into the valley of death? Gallant, no doubt, but it is called the valley of death for a reason. Credit to Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. They have seen the light. That's why the FT has banished them from the West. Hard luck. Little Belgium has taken your place. President Trump, you're no longer a pucka member of the Western master race, which, as Lavrov said today, for 500 years has been the source of almost all of the trouble in the world. Well, we ain't done yet. The sun may be setting on our economies. Our societies may be broke and broken. Our industries may be closing in the name of greenery, quackery, and the rest. It is not inspiring to me. And it will not be inspiring to potential recruits of the British Armed Forces, whose numbers are falling like a stone. Which is why I have to reiterate, if the boots that you're going to put on the ground, Keir Starmer, in any way involve the forced conscription of our young men and women into your fool's errand in Ukraine, we will oppose you with every fiber of our being. You'll have to imprison all of us. We will organize a mass movement against conscription in Britain, the like of which you cannot even imagine. We'll hide conscripts to keep them out of your grisly clutches. We will conduct a campaign of peaceful civil disobedience in Britain that will bring your conscription and your war drive grinding to a halt. We will make you look like a fool in front of the rest of the woke brigade you clearly hope to lead. Which brings me to the events in the Oval Office. I must tell you, I've been a little bit surprised at some of the people who saw the situation diametrically opposite to mine. Lindsay German, for example, the convener of the Stop the War Coalition, of which I was a co-founder along with her, she tweeted that it was a disgraceful display of bullying by Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. The bullies were the guys telling Zelensky that this war has to stop. The victim of the bullying was the guy who turned up looking like a ragged arse street corner boy, a thug, strutting around from a sedentary position, demanding more money, more weapons, more war. How does your sympathy lie with the guy demanding more war, and your allocation of the title thuggery go to the guys that were telling him, it's all over, we're pulling stumps, we're going to negotiate an end to this. You're gambling with World War III, Trump told him. How dare you disrespect us, said the Vice President J.D. Vance. In reply to which, Zelensky called him a lying bitch. In Russian, of course, because Ukrainian is not his first language. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm for candor. I don't really care that he doesn't wear a suit. The Pope doesn't wear a suit to the Oval Office either. I don't even care that he roughs up the company that he's in. But when you are $500 billion in debt to somebody, the simplest ABC of etiquette and diplomacy would tell you that you better be on your best behavior, especially when you've come to demand that they give you even more money, even more weapons. So that tells me that Zelensky is an idiot, perhaps a chemically fueled idiot, because nobody but an idiot would turn up behaving like that, dressed like that, calling the vice president to his face a lying bitch like that, unless he had lost the balance of his sensibilities. So I'm asking you, if this really is a man to whom we should be giving even more money and even more weapons, I'll tell you what's going to happen to the boots on the ground and the planes in the air that Keir Starmer promised today in public. The airplanes will be shot down out of the sky if they even get off the runway. Whether they take off from Poland or whether they take off from the soon-to-be entirely inoperable Ukrainian airfields, they will be shot from the sky. And still more British treasure, and more importantly, still more British servicemen's blood will be lost for nothing. And as for the shoes, they will soon be empty shoes, because with just one missile, the Russian armed forces will take out the entire barmy army sent by Starmer into that valley of death. And so it is with great earnestness I appeal to my fellow countrymen and women. I appeal even to the Prime Minister, but more, I appeal to His Majesty the King, being abused and cruelly abused in the service of Keir Starmer's woke political brigade. Don't do it. Don't send our gallant young men and women, especially if you've conscripted them and forced them on to a horse into the valley of death they rode. Don't do it. This is the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.